Hey, welcome to the Regeneration Podcast. A few things. Again, the
Right there.
podcast
Right
is there
there.
on podcast, Spotify. It's there on your screen and Michael Martin's
It's on
merch
my mug.
mug, and it's also on YouTube. We see, Michael, we see, I don't know how accurate these things are, but on the podcast hosting service and on YouTube, I've told you that we're still around 35%. Ages, most all of our listeners are between 35 and like 55, and we're still kind of overridingly male. I'll be honest, if I had my wish list, I would hope to have some more women listening. Why do you think that's the case, Michael?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm afraid to say.
No,
I don't know. I mean, I know we do have women listeners because I hear
we
from
do.
them.
We do.
Quite a few. In
Yeah.
fact, our friend Lindsay she's a frequent listener. And Carol Johnston, as you know, I just heard from
Yeah.
her the other day. She's enjoying catching up. So I don't know if I trust those analytics either, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. It's again who owns the computer and so forth. But maybe
Yeah,
we'll
I don't
have
know.
we can ask Lindsay or some other or Tara. We'll have her on and ask her that get their
Hey,
sensibilities. But
Therese listens to us all the time. I mean, I know a
all
lot
the
of
time.
people.
I know that Lindsay Rose, who we had on 2 weeks ago, that she is familiar. She must have watched the interview I did with one of our guests today, a few weeks ago too,
Yeah.
because she was referencing R.J. Stewart, who came up in our interview with Stephen Clarke, who's one of our guests this morning, as well as a fan favorite and who's been on maybe 5 or 6 times, Guido Preparata. And today we're going to talk about the Underworld, Los Alamos. It's kind of where we got, I would think, cut off with Stephen a few weeks ago. We had, I think his internet crapped out. And timing it with Christopher Nolan's movie on Oppenheimer, we're talking about Los Alamos, the Underworld, and the bomb. And I was noticing, Stephen, we're going to begin with you, that my son's generation, the movie Oppenheimer came out, and boy, it was getting a lot of attention before people saw it. But my son's so 20, 23, I think now, and his generation did not really enjoy the movie too much, but only because they love Christopher Nolan because it's all things like dark and everything. But when it came to this one about the bomb, they just there wasn't that much interest. But something I've noticed recently too is that the bomb, there's a poetry here. Graham Greene had a famous essay in the tablet on bringing together in his case it was the Feast of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, not the Transfiguration, which the bombing often falls on. He played with those themes. My son tells me that Jordan Peterson's book Maps of Meaning all came from years of worrying about the nuclear holocaust, but not necessarily interested in the bomb. You're going to say, Michael?
Yeah, well, I think this I noticed too with my college students. I mean, one big difference between our generation and theirs is we grew up in the shadow of the bomb in World War II and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I had friends in high school whose parents had been in concentration camps, you know what I mean? And and people don't realize it. In fact, they're few and far between now, those concentration camp survivors.
Right.
There aren't too many left. And in fact, my mother, when she was in a nursing home, one of the women she typically ate lunch with still had the tattoo on her hand and she was Greek. She was a Greek Jew. She still had it from being incarcerated during the war as a little girl, right? So, but kids these days, they just don't. It doesn't register with them.
No, and even though these cluster bombs will go into it, they seem to be based with depleted uranium and so forth.
Yeah.
But so Jordan Peterson was worried about the nuclear Armageddon, but different than the interest in what they did. And I think, Stephen, I'm going to lead you off on this. They did, with matter with the bomb, but I know where we did see it at that time is Emil Stern, this famous Catholic convert, who is a psychoanalyst, friends of Freud and so forth. He saw, because he was interested, his book, The Flight from the Feminine, was a biggie. He dealt with the feminine and the unconscious, and he had to see some of these insights. Of course, Owen Barfield, he said, what man let loose was the forces with the bomb of his own unconscious mind. This is something that didn't seem to interest people. Flight for Women. It's a great book. Yeah. And my son, again, going back to the movie Oppenheimer, he said all of his friends preferred the Barbie movie, which is something else. So, Stephen, Los Alamos, you live there. You come at the issue of the bomb from your interest in these Mexican mysteries we're talking about, from your own underworld explorations with shamans and Native Americans in and around Los Alamos and the telluric forces there, and your explorations of the underworld. Can you tell us, a little bit about your background and your interest in exploring kind of these three related concepts and more?
Sure. It's hard to know where to start, but you can start pretty much anywhere. And if we talk long enough, we'll cover most of the points, I suppose. But first of all, I have to say that even though most of us have background and understanding in Steiner's anthroposophy, I don't really self-identify as an anthroposophist. I have too many problems with Steiner's approach to different things, particularly things dealing with events in America. And as far as Mexican mysteries go, I think it's an extremely unfortunate characterization, because the essence of the real Mexican mysteries is the fact that during the time of Christ in Palestine, there was a parallel engagement here in the West, in the Western continents, that facilitated the entry of Christ into the planetary sphere at his death. And they also facilitated his resurrection. Now, why anthroposophists don't even seem to be interested in that is probably a subject for another discussion. But nonetheless, as an American citizen, born in 1948, as soon as I woke up in my body, I realized something was seriously wrong with things on the planet. I really wasn't prepared for that, and freaked me out. And so I decided I was going to figure out what was going on as best I could. So what became apparent to me, and some what's pretty much available to anyone if they research the history of things, is that two different things came together in Los Alamos to make the bomb possible. One was the European heritage of the scientists involved, who drew on impulses all the way going back to Volta's discovery of electricity back in the 1700s at some point. And you get to the steam engine and all kinds of employment of technology meant to subdue nature or liberate us from it. Basically, to liberate us from the consequences of our actions, basically. And they've really piled up, and as we see every day, pretty much. The other half of it was the existing spiritual current in not just the Western Hemisphere, but in that area of the four corners of the United States, Los Alamos. I never lived in Los Alamos, but I did live in Santa Fe for 30 years, which is about 30 miles away as the crow flies. Los Alamos itself is in the middle of a band of what's called as the 8 northern pueblos, and to a larger extent, 18 traditional Native American Pueblo communities, which have never been displaced from their ancestral lands, which is a very important consideration, considering their link to ancestors and all of that. And for those two impulses to come together, it was a very singular occurrence. The Native Americans didn't have the technology to make a bomb. The Europeans did, but they didn't have the spiritual background involving the conflicts between progressive and retarded forces which every culture has to deal with. Native Americans, Mesoamericans weren't immune from human nature, but they knew about what transpired in the telluric forces, as you mentioned, the forces within the earth. European spiritual traditions are basically top down. The Native American traditions universally are bottom up. And those two came together in a unique confluence in Los Alamos, and there we have the bomb.
Wow.
In short.
So Guido, give us,
Your audio's off. I can't hear you.
oh, you can't hear me right now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me, Stephen? Stephen looks like he froze up a little bit. We'll see.
There you
Oh,
go.
there
It's
he is.
okay.
I have
Guido,
no
can you?
audio.
Okay. Just,
If you've been hearing me, give me a thumbs up.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't punched any buttons, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Can you just, oh,
What do I need to do?
It's the CIA. It's DARPA.
I can get in there. Hey, Guido, give us some feedback on what you've kind of heard so far. So I'm going to text Stephen here. This is all good for podcast.
I am unmuted.
Okay.
You're
Can
good.
you,
I can hear you.
I'd never thought of connecting the Indians to the.
Nothing here, Guido.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Guido.
okay.
Am I loud enough?
You can continue. Yeah. I'll try and work with Stephen here.
Yeah, no, I never thought of the two things being connected.
Why don't the rest of you keep talking, and I'll
Okay.
wait for my sound to come up.
Okay.
Okay. It's the second time we've had electronic problems with Stephen. Go ahead, Guido. I'm sorry.
No. Do you want to?
Do
Yeah.
you find it
so-
compelling?
Yeah. It's interesting. I never thought the two things were connected. We were there one summer. I remember I was young, very young, but I remember very vividly. We were in New Mexico. My dad was at Los Alamos. We were living in a place called White Rock. Is it nearby?
Okay.
And I remember how I was just I still have vivid memories of how staggeringly beautiful the state of New Mexico is. And we traveled all over, and we saw the Pueblo, of course, and how and so anyway, I remember all that.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a connection with the bomb, but as far as I wish I were more prepared on this. Because I plan on reading all these things that I was hearing my father and mother talking about, all the more so as I guess my mom was also involved. She worked as a translator for these scientific things in the wake of my dad's, and another one of these is Edward Teller, who was very much
He was big in the movie.
was in the movie too.
Yeah.
Teller was I must have seen him several times because he came to these events that were organized in Sicily. There's a school of theoretical physics there that was run by this Italian that was known in the circles, and my dad was his young collaborator, and so Teller was a big presence. Teller was the father of the hydrogen bomb, right? The H bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's like a forge of mass murderers, I guess. And the only things that I recall were, so there was a lot of talk about Teller. I don't remember what it was about, although he was kind of a flamboyant, difficult person to be around. One.
Yeah.
And my dad mentioning Heisenberg, whom he met as well when he was in old age.
What did he say about him?
Well, he had an enormous admiration for Heisenberg, considered him one of the greatest. And he said about Heisenberg that he obviously felt that whole Nazi thing just weighed very heavily on him, although everybody had tremendous respect. I don't know how, I never heard him say anything about Oppenheimer, really. And I don't know what what he would have said as the value of Oppenheimer as a physicist. I mean, of Heisenberg, he thought, the sun and moon. I don't know about Oppenheimer. I watched the movie and it was so, as I told you, so boring that I gave up. Even, even the fact that they try to spice it up with some kind of essential actress in the movie, which not even
She's
that.
really trendy right now. Yeah. I forget her name.
Yeah, no, just a gorgeous woman, but not even she was able to keep me in it. So obviously, um, so I don't know what the point of the movie was. I'm afraid to say, but you'll enlighten me on
But
that.
I think it was generally this, and I want to hear about like your understanding of like even the stuff about like matter and messing with matter at that level. But I would say there was Ivan Illich once wrote a famous essay on the role of the campus minister, and it was to kind of like if somebody was starting to see through the racket of one of Mike Martin's favorite subjects, like the total fraudulence of higher ed, the campus minister was to give them bending room and then force them back in there and say these people are all really smart, really well intentioned, and selfless. And so, same thing I kind of got with the movie, and some of our listeners could disagree. Is like they told you a really kind of story that wove in lots of darkness and so forth, was very portentous. The bomb scene itself at the test was wild, and it just wants to show you that these people were kind of good people and they had a lot of mixed feelings, and continue on as it were, I think was maybe the message I took away.
The only thing that I remember my dad dwelling on was Fermi, Enrico Fermi, and how he was not ambivalent but somehow disturbed by it's funny how, because it always goes back to one's roots. So I remember my dad at first, he wasn't so much shocked about Hiroshima, but I don't know how he changed over the years.
Right.
But he was somehow uneasy about the fact that Fermi contributed to that project. Fermi was an absolute genius, and I remember my dad saying this, namely, whether the bomb had fallen on Rome would have made no difference to him whatsoever. And I guess that thought disturbed my dad, which I find it very jingoistic, really. I don't know, I don't want to misread him, but I mean, who gives a damn about Rome in the end? It's just a notion of the bomb, which is abominable, whether it falls on Timbuktu or Rome so yeah, I think that I don't know how much of that the movie addressed. Okay. The last thing I'll add is that one of my daughters was showing me a TikTok about something, and it was a little skit about Japan, and there was these, and one of the guys says, well, and it was a kind of I don't know if it was an American girlfriend with a American Japanese boyfriend. But anyway, the punchline was, well, what about you, saying the boy to the girl, what about you? I mean, you dropped the bomb. And she, to this day, she says, we had to. And then the skit goes on without making a ripple, not because this girl said anything that was not in the norm. It's in the norm. We had to. Every time I broach this thing, your average Westerner and American says, well, we had to. To me, that's where the problem lies.
Well, actually, I got my sound back up here.
Oh, great. I'm so glad, Stephen. Yeah.
Thank you, Guido. I appreciate your comments, what I heard of them. But I think my Zoom decided to update itself.
Okay.
The meeting. Anyway, I have to agree with you, Guido. As a matter of fact, I hesitate to say that, but it's true. The Japanese were totally defeated. They're an island nation depending on ocean transport for, so many different things. Their merchant navy had been totally sunk. Their military navy was history. And we didn't need to sacrifice a single soldier invading the island. We could have just blockaded it and waited for them to capitulate. The bomb is not needed. We just wanted to let the Russians know that we had it and that we were prepared to use it.
But I'll go, and thank you for that. I'll go beyond that. And it's like, it's like you're in a, for me, I always say, when you want to take a life, if that's what you're into, if you really like mayhem and which, I'm not going to say I respect it, but if that's what you want, I think that those people who really are keen into, like your average fascist, about physical prowess and all that, and those people when the flag goes up and the heart beats faster and the eyes well up with tears. And I say, that's just great. Why don't you go in the Gobi Desert and just build yourself a bunch of cages and then have a one-on-one engagement? Just kill each other in these cages, but do it the right way. Do it the right way.
Mano y mano.
No, yeah, do it the right way. You're going to take a life. You're not going to push a button, right? You got to take
Look the guy in the eye and do it.
Yeah, you got to, as I said many times, you got to be able to do it with your teeth and nails if it comes to it. And by willing to do it, expose yourself to him doing the same to you. And then lock yourself up in the cage and see what happens, if that's what you want. Because for me, that's the only form of combat that I accept. You may stylize it like the samurai with a sword, but if you ever read like the literature of the samurais, it's just it's a celebration of the laceration of flesh. So it always comes down to the same thing. So going back to the war, it's as if you're fighting with one of these guys and he's on the floor. I mean, you've won. But for some reason, he's tough. He will not tap out. He will not capitulate. And so you have an option. Either you come to an understanding with him, because that's the thing that nobody says. He will not tap out. There's just no way. Why? Well, he's Japanese or whatever it is. He will just not do it. And so come to an understanding with him. So sign a truce. Or accept, you're the winner anyway, but accept a victory not as flamboyant as the one you had planned. This thing registered with no one.
No one. Never.
No one. No. Not only will I not do that, I'm going to, where is it? So you look outside the cage. Where is it that you live? Over there, that barn is yours. All your family's in there? All your animals. Yeah, everything's in there. Good. I'm just going to go there, throw a grenade in there, kill everything, and then you'll understand who's boss. And then that's exactly what the US did. Sometimes I use, even when I want to shock my Puritan friends, I say, I'm going to go in the house and I'm going to rape all the women and I'm going to make you watch. And everybody goes, oh, no, you got to stop. No, that's exactly. But no, but you're not going to do that because the Puritans, they're not blood simple. You got to impress them in a different way. So, but in a way, it's always the same thing. This is what they did. So they might have not used something really violent, like sexual violence, but they definitely threw the grenade in the barn, killing everything that lived from a radius of miles.
And as far as the Puritans go, Guido, we need to remember that the aiming point for the second bomb at Nagasaki was the Roman Catholic Cathedral, which was the center of the largest Christian community in Asia.
Right.
So, put that in
and they left they left a sample of 4 cities to study the effects. This was part of the plan, and it's Curtis LeMay, right? It's what's called firecracker. And there's such design and method in inflicting pain upon your enemy that I don't know why, and I keep saying this, they go on and on about the Nazis and Auschwitz, but frankly, I don't know. Is this is right up there? I see absolutely no difference. They're different, but not different on a different level.
Well, let me switch it up. So we also see the same thing. I mean, the callous disregard of human life, even in Maui, right? I mean, so this is, you don't need an enemy to bring destruction to human life. You just need an objective, right? Or a government. I shouldn't say you. I said governments don't need a reason. They need an objective.
I don't know. I mean, in the end, it's about annexation. Your anthill is out there, and you are just conquering a new one, and you're going to use any means necessary to do it. and you do it. What strikes me most is the impunity with which these things are done, and we're still here talking when everything is just so patent,
Mhm.
you know. But again, there's all these problems with the ego, and there's the idea that we cannot liberate ourselves from this desire to dominate. There's this constant attachment to the roots that I was talking about. Like when my own father were thinking about Rome, that was just concern, Rome. It seems like that. I don't know, but your concern should be the planet as a whole, no matter
Right.
where. So we have, I guess there's the psyche is still very sick, very, very sick.
Yeah. Stephen, then, if you know, and bring us back, Stephen, to, because I think we'll go into the nitty gritty and come out again. But the notion of your sense of, you know, the underworld and this specific act and its symbolic force. You know, I think you said last time you were on, or maybe it was in conversation, that every time a nuclear bomb goes off, you know, there's a tear in the skin, the fabric, the very kind of the body of the earth. But, you know, with your research, when we had you on last time, we're even talking about these, you know, these people who take DMT and they're looking at things and how the underworld is kind of like worlds within worlds. It seems like in your writings, you're exploring even that in connection with the divine feminine. You know, go to that space a little bit and kind of sing your song.
Oh, okay. My basic point of reference for this would be the Kabbalistic tree of life, which has the physical world as the lowest sphere, and you go up through the astral or the lunar sphere. Then you get to the threshold of Mercury and Venus, hot, and that's and you go all the way up to Keter, which is the divine unknown. Which is the Father God. And in the middle there somewhere is supposed to be Sophia, which is hard to pin down. Sophia is called wisdom, wisdom is not really a person unless it's in a metaphysical sense. Anyway, she's kind of a ghostly presence. It's kind of like the Holy Ghost in Catholic theology. She's kind of there, but it's kind of everywhere too. It's kind of vague. But the Father God, man, he's the man. You got to watch out for him for sure, because he's running everything. So it goes. Well, in the West, the basic paradigm is that within the depth of the planet is the mother creatrix, and she works up through prior ages, prior worlds, just the same that Steiner described things percolating down from higher worlds. Over here, they see it percolating up from below, and that's the underworld. And it's just as rich as anything above in its own way. It's kind of like male and female. They aren't opposite, but they aren't the same either. And vive la différence. But the underworld has always been taboo in Western European spirituality. That's where hell is. Uh, well, hell is a complicated subject, but it's not a place, it's a state of being, which can obtain for anyone, anywhere really. Although it can be conglomerated and congealed in certain areas, but it's certainly not within the body of the planet, even though that's even the anthroposophical mythology about it. But it's casual and naive, and it really doesn't hold water. But here in the West, uh, the spiritual traditions have dealt with the complicated factors that accrue in evolution. Personally, we each have our psychological complexes, our PTSDs, and it's up to us to sort it out. And they're never really totally worked out at the end of the game. But you know, we come back to try again, and hopefully we make progress. Uh, the spiritual adepts in the West knew about the conflicts that have happened in the past biography of the planet, and they had means of dealing with them rather constructively. But those were really wiped out with the events of 1492 and all of that. even in anthroposophy, the spiritual traditions of the West have been wiped off the map. Steiner himself stated many times that the Native American races were extinct.
Crazy.
It was to them. Yeah.
Literally, and it's not a mistranslation. It was repeatedly stated it. The Native Americans who were wiped out by the Europeans. So there's no place in European esotericism for considering, what might have gone on here in the past and what is still going on, because the native traditions are still alive, and I've been initiated into them, and they work. It's how it's done over here in this part of the world.
Now, Stephen, let me
And
ask you a question.
they had means for dealing with conflicts within the planetary biography. And if the European scientists hadn't come over here and piggybacked on
Uh,
latent conflicts within those traditions, we wouldn't have had an atomic bomb. They were into mano a mano physical combat. Send out your hero, send out your most valiant warrior, and we'll fight it out. And they had technology of, to a minor extent, but their combat was person to person, and the whole concept of the bomb would have been anathema even to the worst of the very black magicians. They wouldn't have dreamed up such a thing.
So let me ask you a question, Stephen.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Steiner is always talking about the mysteries, right? But if we read, in Greek and Roman mythology, right, you have these stories of people going into the underworld, like Orpheus, or whether it's Persephone or whoever happens to be, Aeneas in the Aeneid goes into the underworld, which seems to me, from what you're describing in Native American traditions, is not the same thing, but there may be a connection. And which I want, I think, in all those stories, right? There's once you go into the underworld, you don't go back the same person. You take, in the case of Persephone, she takes a piece of the underworld with her, right?
It's transformative. It's not theory.
Right.
It's experiential, and it's real because you come out different.
Right.
Because you've challenged your own double and shadow. You've passed through your psychological complexes. Maybe you put them aside for a while. You always come back to them. But
Right.
like Barfield said, the underworld is a journey into your unconscious or your subconscious. Well,
Yeah.
that's true, but that's only the first step. Once you go through that, you enter a greater world, which is transpersonal. And you encounter the spirit beings, which are responsible for the formation of physical matter, for the existence of electrons, for the existence of the fact that you plant a seed and out comes a tree. This happens within the earth, and it's where regeneration takes place. And there's no regeneration without, cleaning house first, and that's dealing with your own double and shadow type stuff. And that's really kind of, no one likes to go there. It's not pleasant. And a lot of the metaphysical junk that's out there on the internet is basically avoidance, spiritual bypassing. You
Yep.
confront the demons, and even if you lose, something remains, and you come back. And it's challenging, but it's a hard road and it's a deep road. But like I said, it's what's been cultivated through thousands and thousands of years of spiritual traditions and adepts, shamans, initiates that have kept these traditions alive. You enter the native ceremonies and they're experiential. There's nothing like it in anthroposophy. It's all lectures.
Now,
Yeah.
Guido, Stephen's taken a unique role, as you can hear, kind of looking at those Mexican mysteries, doing with him what he needs to do, just taking them as pointers and so forth. Your work, and probably any other friend I know, you spend all night not sleeping, thinking about questions of theodicy and so forth. There's and especially in this area of overlap between your work. I'm thinking again with your dad and physics and what you know about that world that he was exploring. And Stephen, as he speaks with, I believe, my youngest son watched the Selection of Other People. Stephen speaks with, a comfortability and a sense of authority. I still remember the last time you were describing a shaman, Stephen. It's like that guy who you would trust a child with, that guy who you'd go to for health and help. But Guido, what are you hearing? What are you hearing when Stephen speaks that ties into your deepest interest? Because I've known you for a long time, Guido, and Stephen, he's got something different for me that I think sounds refreshing, because he's really explored this underworld. He's speaking to me with more authority on that matter than anybody else we've had on the show.
Well, no, I envy him. I wish I were initiated too in those mysteries. It must be fabulous. I don't know. I don't have any of that. I don't know. I'm so confused in a way. I'm sure Stephen is not at all. But I hear what he's saying. And but tell us about this. You say nobody wants to go there. It's a painful journey. What do you mean exactly?
Well, no one likes to be told they're wrong on a simple basis. Am I still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. My video just went out.
Okay, we see you. We see you.
Okay, that's good. No one likes to be told they made a mistake. No one likes to remember the fact that when they were younger, they had a pet and they didn't treat it well. I had a dog. It's one of the most humiliating experiences of my life to recall. I just cringe. I was unfaithful to my pet. I'm not going to get into the gory details, but it was a shameful episode, and I have to realize that that I was capable of that then, and I'm probably capable of that now if I let myself off the leash. We're all capable of everything. We all have a little Hitler inside of us, and we all have a little Christ inside of us. And like the shaman said to the child that said, "I have these wolves inside of me. There's a good wolf and a bad wolf. What am I going to do?" And it says, "It depends which one you feed."
Right.
And you never escape the curse of not being God. We're all partial beings, and that's where evil comes in. It's because we're never complete. That's why we need each other. We can't beat up on each other. These are basic life lessons, They're this stuff about the mysteries and everything is some highfalutin thing. It's really just learning how to live right and watching and just watching and being attentive, just looking out the window and meditating on watching the grass grow or the clouds move across the sky can teach you so much. The whole world is a mystery school. It's a secret in plain sight. So, I have a different point of view on all this.
It's kind of a beautiful point of view, Stephen. Guido, but you're still, Guido, stay with this a little bit. You guys talking about this stuff is really, really interesting to me.
No, I agree. I resonate with what Stephen said. As I said, I wish I'd been in a word approach this with a certain discipline, and I don't. I know I still make a lot of nightmares. I still have a lot of nightmares. And I was reading into some kind of this Gnostic literature that happens when you go and you visit what they call the I don't know, Stephen can help me with that. They call these the it's some kind of infernal realms, and so you go there when you roam, right, at night. And one should be in control of one's ship when you roam, but I am absolutely not. So I suppose when you're
this is like gold.
No, but I guess when you're an initiate, I guess they teach you how to steer the boat, right? And they teach you where to go and what you're seeing and not seeing. I've been reading it in books, and I can recognize certain things, but I don't and it's the you know, you see in the movies Insidious, that's what it's about, right? And
The
but I
movie
don't
Insidious, I'll have to write. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't have any method or any rhyme or reason the way in which I go about. And so sometimes I'm just afraid of falling asleep, kind of a Nightmare on Elm Street, because I never know where the hell I'm going to end up. But I suppose that when you dream, Stephen, you perfectly know where you're going. You can choose your destinations, right?
No, absolutely not. I don't
No?
have any skill in dream work.
Okay.
Sorry. No, when when most of us work out of a European tradition, whether we're in Europe or in America, we learn it from lectures or nowadays YouTubes or or we read books. You know, we're really big on books, and it's up to us to take all these little puzzle pieces that have been, you know, worked over by people, and some of the pieces have gotten really mangled because some people have tried to jam a bad piece into a improper, you know, space. You know, so you're stuck with this mangled piece of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and you're trying to make sense of it, and you're trying to reinvent the wheel on how all this stuff fits together. Well, there's no substitute for personal instruction. That's that's it.
Say more.
That's it. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
you find someone who can.
Oh, I see exactly what you're saying. I almost thought you were saying like being an autodidact. No, find somebody.
Absolutely the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, find someone
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
teach you, and is if they're a real teacher, it won't just be their own thing. They'll be working out of a tradition that has a lineage that goes way back. Stuff has been sorted out, and they know what works. And the 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 your instructor is going to be a member of a community, and you watch them how they operate in the community, and you watch how the people in the community relate to this person. Uh, and it's very interesting to watch that go down, because this person could be a vast adept. He can, there's a medicine man out of Lucatucay, Arizona. Excuse me, I'm getting cottonmouth. Lucatucay, Arizona, who cured me of 50 years of Lyme disease by taking me to the deepest underworld, uh, putting me back in touch with my original pattern and bringing me all the way back up to the point where when I came back out, I was healed and I was conscious the whole time, and I wasn't taking ayahuasca or any funny stuff in the pipe or anything like that. I was conscious the whole time, and but after that, he was just another guy, you know. Uh, when he's off the job, he's just a regular guy, and but yet he carried himself with a certain kind of intrinsic authority, which which was reflected in a really easy body language. It's these kind of things that you recognize when people have their shit together. Um, and it's a different kind of thing. You're immersed in when you encounter real teaching, it's not a teaching where you get information, you're shown things. Um, the ceremonies are vitally important. Steiner wanted to bring about the festivals, and if you read what he says about it, he says they're very important, but they really don't amount to much. They aren't transformative. They're more social gatherings. But you encounter a real ceremony that's anchored in an indigenous tradition, and that's got some weight to it. It's got some heft, and it will if you participate in those ceremonies, you will find out certain things about yourself that are wonderful, and so you roll with it and you see where it goes. And in the final analysis, they always say it's up to you.
Hmm.
You can take responsibility for your own life and accept the consequences and learn from them. Um, but you can't insulate yourself from reality by books or anything like that. Although once you have a certain kind of experience, you can recognize uh, certain things that other people have similarly experienced and tried to express in books. But it's like sex, you can talk about it, read about it, debate about it, but if you haven't had it, you really don't. You really shouldn't be passing on your opinion.
That's
Michael's
right.
nodding over there. That's never played into Michael's work on the Roman Catholic Church or anything.
Oh no. Yeah, don't
So
even get me.
that. I guess that's my rep on that.
I still think it was so funny when around this time last year, I was mentioning, it was when I first met Guido face to face, and I'd long admired his work. It's and I talked to him before, but it's one of the most intelligent people, the most intelligent person I've ever met. And we're outside this monastery in Italy, and Guido's talking about like a ghost in his house and what can I do about it. It was just great. It made me hold Guido in even higher esteem. But like where this stuff comes together, hearing Guido ask you that question, hearing the feedback and so forth, really wild for me. I feel like very blessed to be here. Michael, what's your takeaway so far? Ask a question of these two.
Well, there's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But the one thing that keeps tapping on my shoulder, and talking in terms of the Underworld and Oppenheimer, and one thing we haven't talked about yet is how many of these nuclear tests have gone down deep underground, right? And that's kind of disturbing. Well, it's kind of, in a way, it's out of sight, out of mind. We have to test these. We're going to test them. So they test them deep underground. And you got to think that the elementals don't like that, right?
Can't be good.
Can't be
There
good.
were some adepts in over in England that were teachers of one of my teachers, R.J. Stewart, W.G. Gray, and Ronald Heaver, both of whom had very severe cautions and warnings about the dangers of these nuclear tests. There are membranes between the worlds, just like we have our personal skin that encloses our personal reality, and if that's punctured, it's a problem. These nuclear tests punctured membranes in the biosphere of the planet, which allowed very malignant entities, unresolved elements within the planetary biography.
Unresolved elements, interesting. Yeah.
Within to enter our natural reality. Now, some of this was bound to happen eventually through gradual, alchemical, transmogrification, because that divine feminine energies within the earth are, I believe, rising and are responsible for pushing a lot of the sludge in the planetary pipes out before the water runs free, so to speak. But to just do this all at once with violence, as Guido has been talking about, the violence is beyond the kind of thing that arises from personal animosity. It's a march towards the pit, so to speak. And it's not the pit of hell in the middle of the earth. It's the pit of our own unresolved bullshit. And the planet has its own stuff that it has to work through too, and it needs our help, but not in a patronizing way, but by relating to it, and being there with it, like we do with other people. But those atomic bombs were just, horrible things. There's going to be consequences in terms of global warming. Even there's hundreds and hundreds of nuclear power plants that are built on seashores because of you can get access to free cooling water, Well, what happens when the oceans rise? As they're gonna when the Greenland ice cap melts and those big glaciers in Antarctica slide off. Those nuclear power plants are going to be inundated, and talking about to rescue ourselves from those kinds of consequences, there's never been a single nuclear power plant anywhere that's been successfully decommissioned, even under the best of circumstances. So, I mean, the human race is facing some gigantic problems that we haven't even begun to, start thinking about. It's just too terrible. People won't. So, as you reap, so shall ye sow.
Guido, on this issue too, I saw you writing down some things, but talking about the nuclear power plants and all the C's, you're at the same time as the movie Oppenheimer is coming out, we're seeing lots of movement in the news about a thing called cold fusion, which your father was working on too. What does this make you think in those regards, Guido?
Yeah, I know it's strange. They say it's well, when it came out, as we all know, they put the kibosh on it, and for obvious reasons, because apparently it was threatening all sorts of other projects, energy projects that were being sponsored by governments in those days. But the rumor now is that, and so they pulled the plug on that 20 years ago, if not longer. But apparently, what's his name? Bill Gates and others are interested in it now, so it's coming back. Who knows? Now maybe they're preparing some kind of shift, and we'll have to see what they have in mind. They're preparing.
Well, we got our best minds and our best money working on it. They'll probably figure it out at some point. But still, it's technology, and it's dealing with underworld energies that we don't know what we're messing with. We really don't know what we're messing with. It's the genie in the bottle. You can let it out, but trying to put it back in is.
I remember that it's basically like an electrolysis process. So it's but there was an accident once, remember, and then it caused the victim. But it should be in principle should be something a lot safer and a lot cheaper to make. I remember it wasn't, but I don't know
Well, I don't think we can reliably trust people to have more energy at our disposal. I think we need to learn how to use less, rather than forcing and putting nature in a vice and just squeezing the juice out of it. It's not going to have good effects.
It's possible.
It's going to backfire.
Could be.
That's what I think.
Could be.
Interesting. So again, the Los Alamos, can you tell us a little about how you, Stephen, can you, you use the word Los Alamos to denote exactly what,
It's a whole paradigm of militarizing science in the service of the national security state. Mobilizing the best minds to just put nature's nuts in a vice and squeeze it as hard as you can.
Yeah. And so in your writing, that's what Los Alamos just means. Do you ever pit the singularity of Los Alamos and kind of your personal mythos there with Our Lady of Guadalupe? That's a big theme for your work, right?
She's one aspect of the divine feminine that has a fractal guise. The father god is unitary, the mother god is fractal and embraces diversity. You look at you can tell an oak tree by the shape of the leaf, yet no two leaves are absolutely identical. There's diversity, and if disaster hits, it's a open source distributed network. There's always going to be a few outliers that survive and can keep things rolling.
So with the and I kind of like that. I don't think I'm taking it too far afield. We'll circle back a little bit, but I've been thinking since our previous conversation, the notion that the divine feminine is local. We can associate with that with springs and so forth, local springs, but in the Native American tradition, I just don't know as much. Did the Haudenosaunee have a divine feminine goddess that was kind of distinct from? How do you describe that in Native American traditions, that it's this kind of local piece?
Well, I wouldn't really. I don't have any familiarity with that. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have a universal philosophy that applies to everyone at all times, but on a practical level, there's no. It doesn't have any feet to stand on. There's no specificity to it. but any true teaching is time and space conditional, you know. So you've got there was a big coffee table book out a number of years ago called 500 Nations, describing the different native tribes and communities here in North America. And each one had its own creation myth, its own spirit beings, because the spirit beings would reveal themselves very specifically to people in terms of their own language, their own community, their own weather, their own music, their own food, things like this. It's all very grounded in specifics, and it speaks through those things. So, but I dare say that there are elements of the divine feminine, the Haudenosaunee.
Mhm.
However
Yeah.
you pronounce it, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, and
And
Haudenosaunee would be what we
Ghostbusters.
used to call the Iroquois and the Iroquois Confederacy.
Oh, right.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. But
Those guys.
yeah, I just know that that would be a desire working with young people. There'd be a lot of and it's there kind of in the Catholic tradition. Our Lady of La Salette, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of this, Our Lady of that. But I was just trying to tie it back into we're surrounded by mostly Seneca Nation Indians and so forth. It was just a question I had.
Well, the thing about Guadalupe was that it was called Our Lady of Guadalupe because the image and the mythology of it was imported from Guadalupe, Spain. It wasn't the Lady of Guadalupe. It just didn't arise out of the native consciousness. It was imported, but it was adopted by the natives as the only aspect of the conquistadors' Roman Catholic faith that they could appreciate in some kind of way. So they adopted her, and she became an emblem. And in the course of time, she's become inhabited by either a specific or a host of various beings that really speak through her to people. And there are other feminine spirit beings connected with the earth that are known by their native names and that have survived in the old Mesoamerican traditions all the way up to the modern ones.
Right. We also see in the Catholic parlance that parishes will just name themselves Our Lady of the Genesee River, Our Lady of the Lake, which is Ontario, and so forth. Guido, I've also been seeing you scribble some things down. I'd be curious if you had some other questions or anything for Stephen, our guest.
No, I was just I was jotting down feminine music and all that. I seldom I seldom think in these terms. Not that I'm not aware one should, but I always wonder about Lysistrata, the play by Aristophanes, where men are at war, and the women says that until they
No
lay the
more
weapon,
sex.
yeah, no more fun. And I wonder, so which is reasonable, and women are a lot less violent than men. They kill a lot less. They kill each other a lot less. I wonder what we're not. And then now there's all this talk about womanhood and there and that. Although Hollywood is a very different idea of what that womanhood is. It's more about, as somebody said, it's not a celebration of womanhood at all. It's like, let's make women, trample underfoot everybody else, Captain Marvel type of thing. But I wonder where the feminine is these days, to rescue us from this drift. But I guess it's a very naive and completely improper way of visualizing things.
Well, that's also what I was when I began the show by saying to what extent they're true. And I agree with Michael that, our listenership is male. It's not like that's a goal unachieved, but there's got to be a completely different medium. Stephen and Michael on the same question, where's the feminine these days?
Steiner said that Christ was going to come in the clouds, which is a metaphor for basically the biosphere. And if you look at the biosphere, it's all about the cycle of life, the birth, the growth, the maturation, and the death and the resurrection. And that's the cycle of life. That's the divine feminine in action. So you can find it anywhere. It's like I said, it's an open secret. That's my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So you can meditate on clouds, you can meditate on the growing grass. Anything can be a doorway through to what lies behind it. And it's a cooperative thing between male and female, you know, on biological and spiritual levels. You know, they work together.
And
But
well, let me ask you one more question, Stephen. Like, so Guido is, you know, he writes books, starting a press, thinks about, you know, working with social threefolding, and I'm right there with him. Michael has been trying to regenerate the festivals. He's into biodynamic farming. He's a doer. He's a doer. You, and I am holding you in highest regard, you know, it's very practical. You would go, it has to be personal. You seem to be the person who says you got to get in touch with this first, your own underworld, you know, begin with the self. But tell me a little bit more of your, and it's not to demand anything of you that you're not already, but like if somebody says to you that question that people ask of other people, like, what should we do? How do you answer that question?
I'm a firm believer in the Buddha nature, that we all have the Buddha nature inside of ourselves. You can call it the Christ nature, but there's a lot of cultural context to the Buddha nature, which I really appreciate. It's there. All a person has to do is slow down, shut up, and pay attention. Whether it's zazen or just being still inside. If you get quiet enough inside, if you can sit still long enough so your mind finally wears out trying to chase itself around the room of your skull, things settle down and the mud settles to the bottom and the waters become clear, and you start resonating with more subtle energies. And the more still and the more quiet you get, the more different levels of reality start leaking in, and you start hearing those small, still voices that that speak with, you know, real authority, not, you know, lightning bolts and thunder, but stillness. And there's a peace in that stillness, and in that peace that you can find with a stillness meditation. I think that's the absolute bedrock for doing any other kind of spiritual work. You got to be quiet inside. Otherwise, all that you're perceiving will just be what's reflected off the mirror of your own mind. So you gotta clean that up and make some space inside for something else to get in there. You just can't keep piling up concepts or theories or practices. Less is more is what I would say. If you reduce things to absolute essentials to the point where there's nothing left, you can sit there long enough consistently over minutes or weeks or years or decades, sooner or later, you know, spirituality will, you know, find a way in, because it's knocking at the door the whole time. That's what I would advise.
Yeah, and I think what Stephen's describing there when he talks, especially Stephen, you were talking about, you know, attending to the grass or how it grows and its presence and the same thing with clouds. I mean, that's what I've been rattling on about that for years. It's sophiology. That is sophiology. And that's why, I mean, so a lot of people, and sophiology is an attentiveness to the divine feminine, because what it is what you're describing in that kind of disposition, Stephen, is being receptive. And receptivity is a divine feminine quality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
indeed.
yeah, and I think if we look around, we see, and this is precisely what is under attack, but in our entire civilization right now. Partially,
they just won't let us alone, you know.
No,
chasing us everywhere.
they won't let you be receptive. They don't want you to be quiet. I mean, that's one of the things in the Brave New World, in the novel by Aldous Huxley, is that nobody has time to just sit. They can't just sit there for a minute. They always have to fill it up with entertainment or other kinds of bullshit, right? But I think you really see this with I mean, the serious spiritual attack upon the feminine in trying to mechanize childbirth, for instance, or monkey around with human physiology. And, you know, they're talking about implanting wombs into men, into biological men. Are you, this is insanity, right? But that's one of the things. In fact, you know, I hate to keep quoting Aldous Huxley, but that's in Brave New World, one of the worst things you can call somebody is a mother. That's the most vile word in the lexicon in the world that he paints there is mother. You know, I can't believe he said that word, right? And that's where we are. We are at that threshold, ladies and gentlemen. Right? And you can't even say ladies and gentlemen.
You can't do that. No.
You know,
so someone's bound to get
right?
insulted.
It's absolutely insane. Yeah. So, but I think Stephen, I mean, he's more than right. I mean, that disposition which you need to cultivate is what allows the Sophianic to shine through the creation, right? So you're not just looking at grass blowing in the wind or something or clouds moving. It's you're seeing something come from, like if you use a metaphor for stained glass, it's like something is coming through that to illuminate it, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's and that in fact, to Rudolf Steiner's credit, in the book that Christopher Bamford put together called
The Endless Trace.
Isis Sophia, is that what it's called?
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's one of the, you know, when
Well, that's the Schifflinger book, right?
You know, when Steiner gets the Sophianic, that's what he's talking about, you know, that's what has to be restored. And that's why Carl Jung, for instance, was really excited in the 1950s when the dogma of the Immaculate Conception was proclaimed. That he thought, all right, finally, the feminine was going to be integrated into the West. Well, good, you know, it was a hopeful thought at the time. Didn't happen, but at least it was an indication of what could or should happen. But I think, you know, we're at the battle lines have been drawn, and we can see this in Stephen's life, you know, before Stephen was born, where the nuclear testing began just a few years before that. So Stephen was in the on deck circle in the spiritual world. It's seeing that stuff happen, as we all were, you know, and we've just been thinking about this quite a bit recently. Is in fact, I was just writing this morning about, and this might seem not related, but I think it is absolutely related, with we can call it the death of romance, the death of courtship, which there was even when I was a kid, it still was around in kind of a ghost sense, but it's totally absent from the lives of most young people now, because everything's kind of been flattened. Everything is just flat, and because of the internet and, you know, whatever.
We're in a democracy and everyone is equal. Everyone's the same, or should be.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Gender neutral, right? Neutralizing everything.
Yeah.
Denaturing. I mean, seriously, literally denaturing nature. Yeah. So that's where we are. And that is to me, that is the atomic bomb in the underworld.
Cultural realm.
Right.
But let's face it, the reason why also they've been so good at, you know, attacking and all these things that we hold very dear is also because, I mean, they have a great strength, right? What has been done in the past by our race in the name of differentiation of sexes and so on, and the value of family and all that, even when all of that was in place, our record was disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
It was. and
that's
so
Guido at his best. Yeah.
Well, they have a very easy time. And let us not forget that the great strength of what they call now critical theory, and I call it postmodern. I don't call it postmodernism. It was, I got to know it as postmodernism. It has one enormous strength that unless we address it, I mean, and this is why they go with, you know, just full force ahead. is when, when they bash the white male. And it's funny to hear white males bashing the white male. And how could they pull it off? And they did. And the way they did, and I've written extensively about the techniques, the discursive techniques they used to make that happen, which was, especially we Europeans are very snotty. We think Americans are so unsophisticated compared to us. That really is a sign of complete stupidity. That's absolutely not true. And there's so many ways of seeing how completely surpassed the Europeans have been in all, even if their realms linked to power, it doesn't matter. But the greatest strength is that the white male is indeed the worst thing there is. He has the worst record there is. He is by far the most abominable creature, despite his technique, despite the fact of, some kind of artistic masterpieces he's achieved in a variety of ways, but his record is abominable. No other human specimen has done the atrocities that the white one has. Not on that scale, not with that method. And so they go with it. They run with it, and they still are running with it. And then with that, everything else. Oh, the family, but the greatest amount of crimes occurs in the inside the familial walls, and so on and so forth. And so that enables them, that gives them a great leverage to redesign the beehive as they see fit. And unless we're able to counterattack on those very same planes, they're going to win, and they are winning. They're 10 steps ahead. So this is why, and I think I mentioned this when in further conversations we had on this podcast, is, there's all these people I'm in touch with. They call themselves conservative anarchists or whatnot here in Europe, and they lament the good old days. But what good old days? There are no good old days. It was mayhem even before all the coming of modernity. There was not one time where things were bright, even when we had all these things, even when there was courtship. Hell, knights and dames and all that. It was a time of just continuous butchery. I don't remember, just as it was. And people said, no, now let's be sophisticated. Let's, the Middle Ages were not this caricature. But in a way, yes, everything was. Take the Renaissance, the epitome of Italian art. It was just punctuated by an endless effusion of blood. So if this is the condition, if this is the situation, then we cannot lament or find deplorable that the new techno elite is taking the world into a Huxleyan nightmare. They are running on solid foundations.
Hey, Guido, Stephen, that was a great introduction to Guido Preparata right there. That's like
it's true.
Our brightest and best minds and all of our tax dollars are hard at work on that. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All the talent, they have it. Lots of friends of mine, and people out, Steiner, not Steiner, says, we gotta create our own schools. We gotta have our own universities. I'm saying, I'm sure, but it's like, they've taken, they have all the talent, they have all the money. There's nothing we can do. We don't even have a downstream market for those students, even if we wanted to. If we wanted to form them, it's difficult. I think we have to. I know when we get together and we're past the critique stage, we have to think how to be, if we can be operational in some way, because for us it's the key. It's an organizational issue at this point. We just realize how powerful the enemy is. And then it's really hard to acknowledge why is he so powerful in the first place, in the light of everything you've been discussing so far, and the self-knowledge and the divine female and this and that. And again, why aren't they helping us? I don't know, but here's the situation. But even if we were to attempt a counter movement, we would have to have very clear ideas on how to organize that. And that's what I would like to see, as I've been stating many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm equal to it. I very humbly say but I would like to, maybe we should get together and see if we can, through a process of chemistry and brainstorming, as it is called, if we can come up with something like that.
Well,
it's part of the
problem, I think, is that and this is what Huxley's warning was, right, is that these technocrats are trying to create a utopia for them, right? And I'm not, and the thing is, we know, I mean, is your example is we know through history, you know, shit's fucked up. But not everything. But not everything, right? That, you know, and that's one of the things in the Huxley book, when the world controller Mustafa Mond is telling John the Savage, well, you're just arguing for a world that has disease and heartbreak and betrayal, and he says, yeah, I claim them all, right? Because that's, you know, as Stephen was saying earlier, it's part of the human condition is that exists in this plane, right? So you have to, you know, that's part of the journey to the underworld is to confront that, right? Right, Stephen? That's what you're saying. And I think the underworld's
Yeah.
coming to us now. The
Well,
technocratic underworld's coming to us.
yeah. Well, we're all partial beings. Valentin Tauberg, in his meditations on the Tarot, in his reflections on the card of what's commonly called the Pope, but it could be called the Hierophant. The Hierophant has wounds, and like Leonard Cohen said, our cracks are where the light comes in.
Right.
And our wounds are what make us reach out to other people and other, or just the other, with capital O, you know, for completion. Kabbalistically, it's called tikkun on a spiritual level, where you attempt, as far as your own meager efforts can contribute to help restore the integration of the world. And when you start doing that, you start having spiritual allies that appreciate that, and that keeps the wheel of life rolling along. You know, gratitude, humility, appreciation. Yeah, it's just we all do what we can. You know, no one's gonna flip the switch and make things different, but there's so many long range, deep cycle currents that are moving nowadays. They're all converging, you know, like biorhythms, you know, where they all peak up or all crater on your birthday. I don't know what it is, but there are times when your biorhythms all collide, you know, so-called malignantly, and you have a bad day or bad week, but you work it through. But there's some kind of bad biorhythms going on with the planet now. I read something the other day that someone said, "Oh, we're passing through a toxic cloud in the galaxy. You know, it'll be over. You know, in 100,000 years or so, we'll come out of it." Something like that. But there's things going on that we have no idea. But I think we're kind of an X factor. You know, as everything else in the world is kind of in a homeostatic balance until people mess it up. But we're an integral part of the world, and we're supposed to help integrate things. That's how we're going to be the gardeners in the Garden of Eden. We were going to go around and appreciate everything and enjoy everything, and that was our role. We thought we had to improve it or master it, and until we relinquish the idea of control, it's just going to be you know, problems amplifying themselves instead of solving themselves. And frankly, Guido, I appreciate what you're trying to do with threefold social order and whatever your variant of it is. And if that's your karmic placement, you know, then that's, you know, Godspeed. You know, that's not mine. I'm working in other areas, and hopefully there's a synergy, you know, on the inner plane, so to speak, where everyone's best efforts meet up, you know, under some kind of care and guidance. But that's not known to me.
And I know Michael has to leave in a little bit. Some final reflections, Guido.
Yeah, no, as I was listening to all of this, yeah, I just wonder why we're not as Michael was talking about the creating a utopia for them. It's no longer utopia for them. It's very real. I guess I don't know. And how come we're so disorganized in front of facing this is it kind of it puzzles me.
Because we don't want to control anybody. That's why.
Because we all think for ourselves and we all come up with something different and we don't have the overview to put it all together. All the other people are all operating to a master plan. They're all on the same page. That's how the Native Americans got conquered. There's all chiefs and no Indians, so to speak.
Well, but yeah, no, on the one hand, it's great. On the other, though, that just, it opens prairies for them. And it's like, it's not something to be too proud of it in the end, right? Because then we suffer too as a result.
Yeah, it's a mysterious thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's all this talent, there's all this knowledge all around us, or people who don't recognize themselves as part of the system. And yet it just fails to, create a counter movement to the drift we're observing. It just doesn't. And I said this, and you go to these places and you meet people, and there's the agriculturalist, there's the beekeeper, and everybody is amazing. But for some reason, it's these isolated realities that gravitate in a world of privilege, most of them, like the Stein, like the anthroposophists. There's this upper bourgeoisie, right? I mean, I hate the term bourgeoisie, call it upper class, but
It works.
yeah, everybody's in his cocoon, and in the cocoon you look great, but the cocoon is an extension of the beehive, and so of the main hive. And so in the end, I wonder, what's the point if you're still part of that? I don't know. It just goes back to the question of, or the question of Junger. How do you survive inside this mechanized beehive? And he wrote that amazing novel, I don't even pronounce it, Elmisville, which is one of his latest novels in the 1970s, where the protagonist is a cupbearer. You're the cupbearer to the tyrant. It's this guy is kind of really on his guard. He's afraid of the tyrant, but he serves him. It's kind of like, and he calls that the anarch, not the anarchist, but I'm thinking that's very clever, but
yeah,
what does that mean anyway?
Yeah.
We're cupbearers to the tyrants. So obviously it didn't solve the problem. But how
about this then? Yeah. So what we're going to do, Michael's going to have to leave. I was interested in getting Guido and Stephen together again. And I think we're going to do this again too, because I think, even Guido, you could help me formulate some of these conversations again. So we gather this group and go at that level. And Stephen, you're willing to come back, aren't you, friend?
Sure.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. I think, this hit a really neat kind of a segue point. Because I've been with Guido on this kind of long march and everything. And you two getting together has been for me as enlightening as I knew it would. And I knew Michael was going to be very much so. So Michael, you can go peace out, but we're going to see everybody next week. We've got a couple of subjects coming up. And Guido and Stephen, thanks so much for being on the Regeneration Podcast. Yep.
Thank you.
Take it easy. Yep.
Fun being here. Thank you, both of
yeah.
all of
you. Bye. Let's see.
All right, Mike.
That's good. I got to.
We'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Guido. Take it easy.
All right, be well.